Hey everyone, good evening. Welcome to the Layover. Tonight, Mark's missing cheese. Lindsay's definitely left us now. And I'm talking about rubber inflatables. Welcome to the Layover Live.
One life for the revolution. Rise up and unite. Woo! Rise up.
We are going to get into trouble, you know that. You know why we're going to get into trouble?
Why?
Because I think I pressed the button about 10 seconds too early and we actually went live before we should have gone live. So Lindsay's going to tell us off already. But you're looking really good tonight. Lighting's making you look good. Yeah.
You said unkind things about me just before we came on air. I think you're just trying to
make up for it in public. I am.
Anyway,
what have you got for this week, Billy?
I spent Monday and Tuesday recovering from Jerry because he's just so high energy.
It was bonkers, wasn't it? I have never ever done an interview like that in my life. He was a lot of fun, but oh my goodness, was it absolutely off the plot? Yeah, I know.
Really good fun. What else have I been doing? I went did a tiny little bit of cub flying, and I also flew to Corfu and back for job flying, which was lovely. It was lovely. It was lovely to see people going on their holidays, enjoying themselves, and everyone was, terribly pleasant and well behaved, and it was wonderful. It was really good, and the weather was amazing. Got some pictures on if you want to see it. But yeah. How about you? What have you been up to?
Sadly, I've been at home standing by to stand by. So I've been ready to go just in case anybody needs me. But as Lindsay seems to be doing all the A350 flying for the entire fleet, I've decided that I'll just stay at home and be on standby.
I apologise that it's just me, 2 weeks on the bounce now. But she's on her way once again to Mumbai. A place that this time last week she hadn't been. She's now been twice. So, but yes, there we are. We do need her to keep things under control, really, don't we? Let's face it.
We do, because it's getting a bit out of hand, and we need to be reeled in. So, tell me, cheese is my favourite thing in the world. Why are you missing? Why are you missing cheese, Mark?
Okay, so this is your weird, tenuous link to Wisconsin. In fact, it's not very tenuous because it's a dairy state, is Wisconsin. And Wisconsin, of course, is the home of Oshkosh, which that's a great view of I think they call that bit the Boeing Plaza.
It is Boeing Plaza,
there is a Boeing, because I can see a beach starship there. So that's pretty cool. And I think I can see an F-35 sitting there. You and I have both been, although not together. It would be cool for us all to go.
Maybe next year when we can travel a bit more.
If only. It is enormous. Okay, so for anyone who's thinking, I don't know whether I need to go to Oshkosh. Number one, you need to go. Number two, it's very difficult to describe what Oshkosh is. I don't know about that. It's got that kind of festival vibe. Absolutely everything is there. It's run by the EAA, which is the Experimental Aircraft Association. There's also a fairly big showing there from the IAC, which is the International Aerobatics Club. But actually, it caters for all of aviation. Absolutely everything. It's amazing.
A couple of big numbers. Yeah, so a couple of big numbers. They get about 600,000 visitors to the air show, which is bonkers. 87 nations were represented last year. 10,000 aircraft flew in, of which just a tad under 9,000 were show planes. And they had about 1,000 media representatives from six continents. with all just a little under 1,000 commercial exhibitors. It is, and I'll show you this. Right, so this might not mean much to many people, but these are all, every little diamond there is an airplane. And there's a thing called the Fisk Arrival, yeah. So a very famous arrival via the point called Fisk. And basically you cross that point at a certain altitude doing a certain speed, and there is very little air traffic control. It's all procedural. And this is the long line of airplanes landing at Oshkosh. It is, for the period of the air show, the busiest FA control tower in the US, and possibly at some points the busiest in the world. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing.
It is brilliant. It's handled very well. There's a special NOTAM that goes out with it. There's a big sort of briefing. People generally practice to go in there. I'm addicted to the EAA live stream for arrivals, so things like the Bonanza mass arrivals and so on. You know, it's just awesome, absolutely amazing. Did you put your name on any of the airline pilot boards there, Scotty?
Yes, I did. But I tell you what I did manage to do. So I went in 2018, and the only reason I got to go was I convinced Sharon that it was also a craft fair. So I said, there'll be loads of crafty stuff there. Don't worry, you'll be able to go and do shopping and see all these amazing crafts. She got there and there were 600,000 people looking at 3,000 airplanes. She was not impressed. Yeah, this was her putting on her happy smiley face, but Ethan was not impressed. It was good fun, and we did some amazing stuff. I'm sure I've told you and people before. I actually flew in That's All Brother, the very famous DC-3, and we flew in a formation of DC-3s. When we finish, I'll show you a video of me doing a fly past in that formation over Oshkosh, so you can get an idea of the size of it.
A friend of mine, well, I say a friend of mine, so I put my name on one of those boards, and a guy that I hadn't seen since training phoned me. We spent a couple of days hanging out, which was just amazing, like 25 years since I'd seen him. Just amazing. There you go. That is a big long line of Spartan executives. They only made, I think, 32 or something. And there are a gazillion of them all lined up there. Also pretty nice. That's a Comanche 400, which I'd never seen despite my long association with Comanches. Fifi, just awesome.
Yeah, I know. I'm really interested in this last picture that you've given us here. This airplane looks like a wreck, mate. So what's this all about?
Yeah, and that's what I thought. It had a sign in the window to be judged for a show, for like a concours show or whatever it was. And it was a very old little sit-up and beg straight tail 172, and it did look really cute. I thought, oh my goodness me, how has someone flown that thing in? And it turned out to be, if anybody's a V-dub fanatic, it turned out to be a rat-look airplane. So although they'd made it look very old, it was absolutely immaculate, apart from the sort of paint finish, which had been deliberately distressed. And every screw on it was perfect. It was amazing. It was really cool, actually. It made me think differently about aircraft restorations.
Oh, really? Cool. Let's watch a video of me doing a fly past, and you can see how big the car park is.
Enough about me. Let's talk about you.
Yeah, enough about me. Let's talk about me. Yeah, here we are. Now, the bizarre thing that I thought about all of this was, and you may have noticed it, is that we're doing a fly past on one runway while somebody's doing a full aerobatics display on the other runway at 90 degrees to it. It is absolutely bonkers. Whoever is the safety manager must have a cardiac arrest and they have to replace them every year. There is no way I'd be signing off on any of that stuff.
I was actually very impressed with how they did it. I thought it was very clever to accommodate it all, but there we go. There we go. So you must go, basically. Get out there, go when you can. Good. Rubber.
So what we'll rubber
inflatable What are you talking about here?
Right. So it's not rubber boats. I don't like boats. You
Yeah.
all know I don't like boats. There is no
I saw
freaking
you
way
near
you
the
can get a
water.
rubber. Yeah. Well,
I
in
saw
fact,
you
we've
near the
recently
water
been
the other day.
near the water, and I was being repelled away from it.
Yeah.
This is we've got this thing every week, haven't we? I bring up an obscure airplane that we found. This one is super obscure. It's called the ML Utility Mark 1. It was a 2-seat observer aircraft. Yeah, stand by for that.
Catchy name.
It was designed in 1954 by ML Aviation at White Waltham, so not far from you.
Home base.
Yeah, and the aircraft featured a rubberized inflatable wing, which was supposed to make setup quick. I'm not making this up. Seriously, this looks like something that you would have as a rubber ring or an inflatable in the swimming pool. Look at this. That wing is blown up. It is air. So, yes, it's a wing made of air to sort out the pressure. So, not unsurprisingly, they didn't make very many of these. Okay, they only made 3. And they didn't last very long. You could probably see why. I mean, there is a bit of a droop on the old wing there. But it did 58 miles an hour and could maximum takeoff weight of 935 pounds. So couldn't quite get me off the ground, but maybe you.
I'm going to give you a link to the space program from this.
Go on.
So the original Gemini capsule, they looked at an inflatable kind of hang glider type wing for it to do a kind of wing-borne flight. You can go and see it in Smithsonian, and it's called a I want to say Rologo, but it's a Rogologo, something like that wing. And it was, the idea was it kind of filled up. You could deploy it, and it kind of filled up.
It was a bit like a hang glider, wasn't it? Yeah.
There is a link. Yeah, exactly that. Well, it looks that looks dreadful. So thanks for sharing that.
Always glad to bring something out.
I've got something a bit slicker.
Oh, go on.
It's changed its parentage. So once upon a time, this was the Cessna Denali, and now it's the Beechcraft Denali. There we go.
Ooh, nice.
Those of you who think, hang on a minute, isn't that just a PC-12? Could be forgiven. So I've been doing a bit of a stare and compare at the stats. It's very similar, but I think this is slotting into the range where the old King Air C90 was.
They've stopped making that.
Yeah, they've just stopped making it, which is incredible because I think they started making the King Air in something like 61. And it's Garmin 3000, 285 knot cruise, but they've put it sort of firmly in the Beechcraft stable. If you can't look too closely because it's got the Cessna logo in the middle of the control column on that one.
It does, doesn't it? And this is the Beechcraft press photos as well, and they've got the wrong logos. I didn't notice that. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Interesting thing for me is that they've not used the traditional Pratt & Whitney PT6. They've gone for a brand new build engine, which is really brave of them.
Yes. So and what's interesting is it's very FADEC, and it's very, I don't know whether it's going to take out all the sort of yaw type issues, but obviously single engine turbine is a thing. You can do commercial operations on them now. I mean, it's very impressive. It'll be interesting to see how it fares against the PC-12, which is, by the way, fantastic. What do you reckon? Thoughts?
I reckon it looks really good, actually. You know, I'm a Beechcraft fan, and they are definitely trying to slit into that PC-12 marketplace, particularly SET, a single engine turbine, is becoming really popular now because it's cheaper. Why have a King Air with 2 engines when you can get just as, in fact, slightly more seats, in fact, in this case, than a King Air with only 1 engine? So your operating costs are way down. So I think it's got a market. I think it'll be successful. People will buy it. It's a stepping stone to a small jet, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, you only need to filter in the US on Flight Radar or something like that. Just put PC-12 up, or TBM 700 and see how many of those airplanes are out there flying on a day-to-day basis. Really quite impressive.
Lots
there we go.
Whisk causing a stir. Yeah. So Whisk is another one of these urban mobility companies. They're building an air taxi, and Whisk and Archer are locked in this really quite bitter court battle about IP. So they've had a lawsuit dismissed. They're appealing this. So they think that somebody from Whisk who was poached to go to Archer took some IP from Whisk, which means that the Archer airplane now looks like the Whisk airplane. So I'm going to let you see them. Let me know what you think is similar. Right. So here is the Whisk airplane. Now, quite aptly named, I think. Got a few whisks on there. It's very yellow, but looks quite cool.
It's kind of got like a yolk and a white bit.
Yeah, it's quite nice though. I think it looks quite cool. Now here is the Archer one.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think? Similar-ish in that they've got wheels, but they all kind of look the same anyway, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what anyone else thinks on the comments, but I mean, I actually quite like the darker coloured one as opposed to the yellow one.
It says here it appears to copy the same design that Whisk developed. I'm not completely convinced that that's the case. No, anyway, why are they all in a big legal battle already? They haven't even produced any airplanes yet, have they?
No, they haven't. Nobody's made one that flies. So they're all arguing about this and putting their name out there in a negative way before anybody else touches it. So I think actually it might be a big problem for them when they start to compete in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Very strange.
There was a good save this week by a crew, wasn't there? An EasyJet crew.
Yeah, I don't know if it was actually this week, but certainly BEA, we were talking about an EasyJet aircraft that spoke to a United airplane and said, folks, I think you should go around. And that was because the 787 had sidestepped to the wrong runway. And when I read the details of it, it was a bit of colloquialism, a little bit of misunderstanding. French controller didn't really get the kind of inflection that the American pilot put on the end of their voice, which turned the statement into a question, etc. But ultimately, he lined up on the wrong runway. In fact, I took a photo of Paris the other day, and that runway is in fact dug up. It's a good bit of looking out for our buddies in that flying environment, and that we all need to be kind of invested in the safety of the whole system. So which is really good. And I guess I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you've seen something dodgy occurring and you've
actually
piped up.
Yeah, I haven't actually piped up, but actually very similar to this. I've had one at Kimball recently, but we were joining the circuit with the student, and the circuit was very busy. Some people weren't looking out, lots of departures. And actually, we decided, having got halfway around our join, to depart the circuit, and we called out a few conflicts to people. Not because we were going to strike anyone, but just actually it was just overwhelmed with people doing their own thing and not really looking out and not thinking about what other people are doing in the system. Like, this guy here picked up that the American was doing something wrong. It's that word airmanship. We very often hear it, but people don't really understand what it means.
How would you describe it, Scotty?
Well, how I would describe it actually is how the FAA would describe it. A sound acquaintance with the principles of flight, the ability to operate an aeroplane with competence, precision, both on the ground and in the air. I've blown that one. And the exercise of sound judgment that results in optimal operational safety and efficiency. Now, we could apply that to GA, we could apply that to absolutely everything. It's our responsibility to ensure that we look after everybody. And the best CRM that I have ever seen in a video was actually in a single-seat airplane. And you think, well, how do you have crew resource management in a single-seat airplane? Well, Google Cedar City F-16, and you will see that that individual who had the engine failure, one person in the jet, ended up having probably 5 or 6 people in that cockpit with them, helping them without physically being there, allowing them to focus. Yeah.
Making very sort of carefully timed interventions, which is very. I'm very impressed with that video, actually. Knowledge, skills, and behaviours. That's what the FAA effectively are describing there, aren't they? Which is knowledge, skills, and behaviours. Anyway, Porter. Talk to me about Porter.
Good Lord.
Yeah. Porter before.
We have spoken about Porter before, and quite recently, haven't we? I mean, for those of you who don't know, Porter is essentially the Flybe of Canada. They operate Q400s, Dash 8s, to all sorts of little regional airports. But they made a bizarre announcement this week. They announced that despite not flying a single airplane since March, they're going to buy 30 Embraer 195 E2 jets, which are really quite large jets, really, and not the kind of thing you'd kind of suggest they probably want to be doing in the current market position, but they've gone with it, and they're going to have these over the 737, which they were also looking at because of the MAX problems. They decided not to do it. I think it's just a bizarre situation, very reminiscent of the last vestiges of how Flybe ended up going bust. When they expanded from the Q400, which was a relatively profitable operation, into jets, smaller jets, in fact, the E-jets as well. They ended up not being able to fill the seats or fill the airplanes, and they didn't make any money.
Difficult to know, isn't it? It's difficult to know what's going on behind, like the money behind it, and I mean, United have made similar sort of choices recently. So very, very, very interesting, as you say. I think we're in quite a strange world. We
are in an immensely strange world, but it's our world. But let's talk about some otherworldly stuff now, shall we?
Link, by the way.
Good Link. Hey, you know what? You'd think we did this before. In a bit of a change of pace from last week, Mark, you'll be glad to know. We've got this evening, we're joined by Dr. Nicol Caplin. And Nicol is a deep space exploration scientist. The coolest job title ever. And she works for the European Space Agency. I've been calling it EASA all day, and it's not EASA. EASA does planes, ESA does rockets. So we must remember it's the rocket one, not the plane one. She's going to educate us, Mark, which is not going to be hard.
She's got a big screwdriver.
Yeah. Educate us this evening on things such as extremophile lifeforms.
God, what is that?
We'll find out about that shortly. Importing and exporting life from other planets, and her exciting work on the new Lunar Gateway for NASA. Without further ado, Nicol, good evening. How are you?
Hello, hi. Thanks for having me on. And that was a very smooth link, I must say.
It was pretty good, wasn't it?
It's always smooth here. Always smooth here.
He's getting better and better.
I mean, you say ESA just have rockets, but we have aircraft as well. We have other things.
Do you have a zero-G airplane?
We do. We for parabolic flights, for microgravity research.
Yes.
We need to do some microgravity research.
So no, I haven't had a go, but I am campaigning to have the first cream tea in 0G, because nobody can agree which is the correct order on a scone. Jam first, cream first. I mean, obviously it's jam first, but to settle it, well, the Queen has it that way, but to settle it, I thought, well, if we take them up to space, okay, that's a little bit ambitious. The budget's not quite there, but if we put it on a parabolic flight, then
Yeah,
good enough.
maybe the gravity regime will do something different with the liquids mixing or not mixing, and then you might settle the jam first. It's jam
This
first.
sounds
Debate
like
after all.
valid scientific
Science.
research.
Guys,
Science.
this is science, and you know,
This is the
science is all
kind
about
of thing that I want
questions.
my tax money spent on. This is exactly
Absolutely.
it.
I tell you what, though, the funniest thing is not going to be the scone. I really want to see you drink the tea.
That might not pass safety. Iced tea, but yeah, it's not going to be the same as that.
Yeah.
Steel container.
Hot liquid everywhere.
That would be fantastic. So, well, look,
I am going to ask you.
Sorry,
I am going to ask you later. You talked about aircraft. Now, we have got a picture of you in a particular aircraft that I'm going to have to tell you off about later.
Oh no!
And remind me at the end, because I have a phobia of this particular type of aircraft. And you've got a picture of yourself in one, and so I'm going to have to tell you off later.
No. I think I can guess because there are several, but I'm imagining as a fixed wing fella, this might be the one that you don't like. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we'll go. We'll go
there's only one. We can talk about it later, and I'll tell you off. Mark, over to you.
Scott has a very narrow capability when it comes to withstanding any forms of transport. Boats are out. Any kind of like submarines, anything goes under the water, that's out.
But you were all about the whisk. Like you were for that.
Yeah.
I mean, personally,
the whisk's cool.
Would fly. Yeah, that is cool,
Yeah.
especially in yellow.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about yellow.
I'm kind of eggy. Anyway, look.
Yeah.
Space scientist. Hang on, can you just say your title again?
I'm a deep space exploration scientist for the European Space Agency.
Absolutely awesome. Okay, so look.
It's not quite astronaut, but it works with astronauts.
It's cool enough.
So this is very interesting. Well, I'm already going to apologise for not being an astronaut. Already awesome. Okay, so very often our sort of guests on the layover, they kind of describe their journey into the job they're doing. Very often they have some form of some of them have, quite a few people have some form of family connection or something that links them with the job they end up doing, or some kind of inspiration, certainly in an early age. Was that what happened to you? How did you get from school to ESA?
So I'm just going to shatter your world for a minute, because that's not been the case for me at all. I have no family connection to space whatsoever. I'm the first person in my family to get a GCSE, let alone a PhD.
Oh, really?
So yes,
Really?
Really. So there's been no academics in the family, and nobody really into to space or science. I come from a family of laborers and people that are into.
So what was it that kind of got you to the point where you thought, I tell you what, I'll do space?
So I kind of. I don't want to use the term fell into it, but the way I've described my career and how it's unfolded is very much like a large, strong dog that, it's like a strong dog. If you take it for a walk, it kind of end up taking you for a walk. But the difference is I've really trusted this strong dog to take me on this journey. And sometimes we've ended up in places that were a little bit uncomfortable and tough, but generally this dog is trustworthy. So I left home when I was 16 years old. So super early. And it was I won't go into a sub story or anything. I'm not going to start the show off on a downer, but due to family problems, I left home when I was 16. I got my GCSEs, and I always had the dream of going to university because I had a teacher that told me that I was acting
that's the dog that Mark doesn't trust.
Okay, so please take me for a walk.
Sorry.
What kind of dog is that?
He's a working cocker.
Okay.
He's
so
an
you
idiot.
should trust him. Oh, okay. Or not.
No, he's an absolute idiot. But anyway, carry on. My apologies.
Oh, and sorry if you can hear the yay air traffic. So, but it's just
No,
outside my window.
don't apologise for that.
Yeah, left home when I was 16, had some GCSEs, wanted to get into university because I had a teacher that inspired me and said, hey, Nicole, the way you act at high school, actually, you remind me of a university student a few years too early. And at this point, I kind of went, university? Like, what's that? I wasn't really sure what that entailed, and I didn't know the kinds of things that you can do. And I'd heard of Oxford, I'd heard of Cambridge, but I'd never been around there. I went to a not a bad school, but a very average school. Be careful what I say. In North London. Well, I mean, to give you an example, I remember GCSE results day because there was this one girl in my class who was overjoyed that her GCSE results spelt the word fudge vertically down the page.
Wow,
So
okay.
that's the kind of school I went to.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
so not highly academic. So yeah, university was always kind of the dream. And then I just kind of started thinking, what kind of thing do I like to do? I wasn't very gifted in the sciences, I'd say. Like, it wasn't my thing. I was always really into English, writing. I loved geography as well. I remember I got quite a good GCSE result in geography, so I thought maybe I'll go into that. But actually, I love horses. I've always been horsey since I was a child, always had riding lessons, spent my weekends helping out at the riding school down the road in exchange for lessons, because it's very, very expensive, and I wasn't from that kind of family. So I thought, well, maybe I can be a vet. So I looked into what you needed to get into vet school and just saw, what was it, like A star, A in biology and chemistry and maths, and I just thought, okay, wow, I'll see if I can do that. And I enrolled. I was living in Portsmouth at the time. I had moved in with a group of friends that were at university, because I was surrounding myself with university students. I may have not been totally honest about my age at the time, but enrolled at a local college. But I had no kind of financial backing, so I was also working part-time in shops, cleaning jobs, in nightclubs, as a photographer. I wasn't behind the bar. I was too young to serve alcohol. So I was kind of trying to do everything that I could to kind of fund my A levels, if you like. But I managed to get my A level in English because I think I just was just naturally good at it. But biology and chemistry, I didn't even turn up to my exams in the end because I was so tired from trying to work a million jobs. I remember sleeping in the car park in my little old, I had a Fiat Punto that was like a hand-me-down from family. I remember sleeping in the car park in the lunch hour to just try and get some kip. And so I didn't do very well, but I had enough of a score to actually get into university with the foundation degree. So I did a foundation degree in equine science, which is horse science, because I thought, okay, well, horses, is this a way I can get into veterinary or veterinary nursing? But by the end of the first year, I didn't want to look at a horse. And I knew that was trouble, because here's my passion, and all of a sudden something that I'm enjoying has become nothing but work. So I decided to pull out of that. But there was one part of that course which was on equine color genetics, so the kinds of genetics behind breeding, how you get this kind of color show horse and whatever, and it was the genetics that really grabbed me, and I thought, oh, I want to be a geneticist now. So I wrote to the university, and I knew they had an applied genetics degree. So I said, I'm really, really enthusiastic. I've got top marks in this one module because I did. Please, can you let me on? And I think they just let me on sheer enthusiasm, because if I had applied the other route, that required A levels that I didn't have, but I was kind of already in, so it was a little bit of a backdoor. And then, sorry, I don't know if you can hear seagulls, but I'm living on the coast at the moment. It's very nice. So where was I going? So I started studying genetics at university. didn't do very well because I didn't have that science A-level background. And is your dog annoying you again?
He's not annoying me. He's come in because he's very interested in this. Because
Oh, come on! I keep telling you about my life story.
he's interested in colour genetics because his mum.
That's his pedigree.
Yeah. He's got lots of different.
Oh, I love his little eyebrows.
Background.
He takes that from Mark, actually.
Yeah.
That little eyebrow.
So I tried to study genetics, didn't do very well at it because I didn't have the A levels. Again, didn't turn up to my last exams. Got really, really scared. Actually, it was at the middle. It was in the middle of the recession, and I didn't want to leave university because everyone was crying about having no jobs. And I thought, gosh, I need to get a degree. I need to get a degree in something. I always did photography as a hobby, and I did it on the side, you know, take pictures at sport events and stuff. So I thought I'll just go and get a photography degree. Did a photography degree. They let me on to the second year of that, did it for about a year. And then I thought, oh my God, I really miss the sciences. What have I done? I don't really need a degree for this. Like, yes, it would be good for networking if that is something I wanted to pursue full time. But I thought I have to go back to science. I'm really going to swat up. I'm going to read as much as I can, and I'm going to get this science degree. Went back to the university, and they said, Nicole, you didn't show up for your exams, so genetics is closed, biology is closed. And I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? They said, but there's a slight alternative in this university. We also have a course. We've got two courses, one in environmental science and another one in conservation. And so the head of the department at the time put kind of the prospectus in front of me, and I just looked at it, and I looked at environmental science and conservation biology, and I was just thinking, environmental science, that's really broad. There's probably good job prospects in that because there's everything from climate change to renewable energy. It's really topical. I'll go for that. And I'm so glad I did, because I just fell in love with it. So I started off doing environmental science, had a great time, did loads of field courses, studied down in Dartmoor, went to Tenerife, just had a brilliant time. And then through that, I started to specialize in plant biology, but kind of in the frame of environmental science. And I did a few internships, and I was really getting interested in plants. And I thought, okay, I was going to go and work in the agrochemicals industry. I did an internship for agrochemicals research company, and I did a very seemingly, like, looking back, it was a nice, sweet experiment on plants and radiation in my final year undergrad. And so I did that, and I was thinking about next steps. And my supervisor at the time said to me, "Hey, you seem to be really enjoying what you're doing. What are you thinking about doing after university?" And I thought, wow, I could go and knock on the door of who I interned with, this big plant agrochemicals company, or I could, try and go for a master's, because I knew what that was, more studying. And he said, well, how about you do a bit of a bigger project than you're currently doing? It's plants and it's radiation. It's for about 3.5 to 4 years. We pay you for it. So I went, oh, hang on a minute. And it's called a PhD. And then just suddenly I thought, okay, this sounds like a pretty good deal.
So bachelor's straight to PhD.
Yes, I went from bachelor's to PhD, and I did a couple of master's level stuff as required, as protocol by the university, and I did some communication stuff, because I think science communication is really important. Like, what's the point if you're doing research if you can't explain to people what you're doing? So I did that, and so then I ended up studying plants and radiation, and that was on Earth, I will add. So I went and I looked at places like the Chernobyl exclusion zone, and I looked at the types of plants that were growing around there.
We'll come on to that in a minute. Don't zip ahead. You've seen the questions, so don't zip ahead. I just want to come back to it, Nicole. I find it actually gobsmacking. So here you are now as an established scientist working for a globally recognized organization in a scientific role, purely scientific role, and you didn't turn up for your A-level science exams. Wow, what a story. What an absolute amazing story to get to where you are.
Well, A levels are quite different from self-directed
Oh, I
study
know.
at university.
I know.
It's a little bit unfair to compare, but no, I do.
But,
I'm the scientist on A level in English.
Your story is utterly amazing. Now,
Thank you.
You work for ESA in Holland now, so you're live from Holland this evening.
Yes,
you're in your dream role, but do you aspire to go further? And we're going to talk about some of your experiments later, but would you like to actually take those experiments into space? And I know you work with astronauts. Would you like to be one?
I would love to. Given the opportunity, I would jump at the chance. It would be a dream. And the thing is, I never dreamt about being an astronaut when I was a kid. I think that's quite clear, and like due to my background, it wasn't anything I'd ever considered. But then working in this industry and working directly with the astronauts and telling them, okay, you've got to do this with an experiment or that, I can really see myself in the role. And sometimes it's a little bit frustrating because when there's something that's quite complex that I'm trying to communicate to our astronauts who have a plethora of skills, they're not all biologists. Some of them are geologists, some of them are ex-military pilots, so sometimes I just kind of want to go, could you just send me up there and I'll do it, because I know what to do.
Tell you what, I'll come with you and I'll help you out.
Yeah, let's do that. It's a little bit cramped up there, but I mean,
would it be rude to ask if you've applied in the recent round?
There may be.
You don't have to tell us. You don't have to tell us if you don't.
There may be an application in with my name on it.
Fantastic, and we wish you well. We wish you well for that. It would be amazing.
22,000 others, I'll add. So
22,000. Is that how many have applied?
1,000 applicants, yeah.
And I think, if I recall correctly, taking out the disabled astronaut program, because that's going to sit off to one side, I think they're only looking for 40. Is that correct? 20 and 20 reserves. Was that?
Fewer, no.
Really?
About 5 full-timers, and then no more than 20 reserve astronauts.
Wow.
So it's,
I think, if I remember rightly, I think it was 5 in the disabled astronaut program as well, which were outside of that, which is something which I think is absolutely astounding, and we've talked about previously, actually, with Harv Smith. Actually, I think we talked about that.
Yes, the para-astronaut program, which I'm really excited.
Para-astronaut program, yeah. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff. So, you mentioned Chernobyl. And now, a long while ago, I found there was a lady who used to, she seemed to have some kind of special access. She used to ride through on a motorbike, take photos of the whole environment. And it was, I'll be honest, fascinating. The whole thing was fascinating. And one of the things that was very fascinating was that wildlife and plant life had returned to an extent that seemed surprising, at least to her. And I think she was the daughter of one of the scientists who kind of kept the site. I just assumed that everything would be just be basically a big grey square around Chernobyl, and that's evidently not the case. If they're sending someone like you to go and have a look at the plant life, that's evidently not the case. So what did the research, what were you aiming at with the research, and what did you end up finding?
So that photo that you just showed on screen before, that really gives me the warm fuzzies. Yeah, there they are. That's my entire research consortium. We were all natural environment research.
Basically in shirt sleeves. So no one's worried about radiation there. You're not all dressed up in a big bubble.
No, so the thing about the radiation there is that it's so any radioactive contaminants are laying on the top couple of centimeters of the soil there. Right. So unless you're really going digging, you're not really going to contaminate yourself. And on your way into the 20-kilometer exclusion zone and then the 10-kilometer central zone, which is the most contaminated area, you'll be monitored. So not only do you wear personal dosimeters, we also had active dosimeters with us, and also you'll pass through checkpoints that have like full body scanners. So the thing about radiation is, yes, it has a reputation for being very, very dangerous, and indeed it can be in some forms, but it's very easy to detect with the right equipment. So long
Right.
as you have that, you know where to go, where not to go, and for how long.
Wow. It's just
So,
fascinating.
and that picture of our group there, actually, if you were to go and stand there this very day, you would not see the same background, because the chimney stack that you can see, the striped one there, that's completely covered over now, because that's the melted reactor.
Okay.
And it's now covered by something called the new safe confinement, because
Seen that, yeah.
the ground was unstable, or it is unstable, and so there was the risk that it could collapse. And then if it collapsed, then you're going to have, maybe worst case scenario, Chernobyl Mark II, where everything gets put up into the air and you have all these contaminants, radionuclides hanging about, and that would not be good for anybody. So
No,
it was
that would be
an
bad.
international effort to build that. Yeah.
So back to plants, and then how,
Back to
because we're going to
plants,
get from
yes.
we're going to get from your research to space, and
Yes, we'll get there. We will get there. So, so the plants in Chernobyl, they're doing tremendously well. So you have an area of Chernobyl known as the Red Forest. Now, this was a forested area directly next to the plume of the explosion. So that took the most fallout, and it's called the Red Forest because the trees were literally singed by the radiation, and you can still see the color on the trees today. If you go there, which we did, you can go there, but I wouldn't recommend hanging around for longer than a few minutes, and we didn't. We went with our Geiger counters, and they were going a little bit crazy, so we knew what our safe limits were for, you know, just seeing it. We weren't going to be doing any kind of experiments there. We just wanted to go and observe. For the rest of Chernobyl, so the radiation is quite, it's not uniform. There are hotspots with hot particles emitting, you know, powerful gamma rays. So you'll have areas that are, you know, less populated by plants, and then you'll have old buildings which are so amazing to walk around and see, where it looks like nature has just completely taken things back. The trees are growing through buildings, up staircases, absolutely beautiful. And it goes to show that nature really doesn't need humans to thrive.
Yeah,
and I mean,
kind of
if you
finds a
want,
way.
it's kind of like a sanctuary now for wildlife, for fauna and flora. If you want to make a wildlife sanctuary anywhere in the world, and James Lovelock, a famous naturalist, said this, you could put some high-level radioactive waste in the middle of an area where humans can't go, and everything else will do quite okay. And yeah, that seems to be the case. But it's not a surprise that plants can handle high doses of radiation, because plants evolved 2.5 million years ago, before humans, you know, before humans were around. So they were the first to colonize the land surface when the background levels of radiation that you got on Earth were much higher than you get to today. So the plants evolved in this presence of radiation, which is why we think there's some ancient evolutionary adaptation mechanisms that are now evident in plants, and that's why you can chuck some radiation towards a plant and it doesn't really seem to be affected, unless it's a hell of a lot.
And the reason that this gets us to space is that if we want to go and colonize Mars, or we want to fly deep space missions, we need to understand the impact of radiation on growing carrots or something like that, I presume.
Growing carrots, on ourselves, on spacecrafts themselves. So radiation is, yeah, a real hot topic, and we haven't quite solved the radiation issue. So getting to Mars at the moment is a dream. But there's a lot of work to be done. But how I transitioned from plants on Earth to plants in space, you may remember Tim Peake's Principia mission.
Yeah.
When Tim flew aboard the ISS, he also took with him a batch of seeds of rocket lettuce. And these were dry seeds in their packets. And there's a very nice picture of him. I'll show it to you. Well, not right now, but you can Google Tim Peake and the rocket lettuce seeds floating around on the ISS. And the idea of this was that these seeds were going to be up there in microgravity, exposed to the not massive doses of radiation, because this is inside the spacecraft. Outside is a different story, but inside you have slightly elevated levels of radiation, and as pilots you're aware of the radiation dose going up as you go up. So the idea was to see if there was a difference between seeds that were kicking around on Earth compared to in space. And it was a citizen science project. When they came back down to Earth, they were farmed out to schools around the UK, and it was a huge project. They had school children growing these plants of rocket lettuce, and they called the project Rocket Science, which is pretty genius. And someone that was working in marketing did very, very good work.
See what they did there.
Science. Yes, see what they did there. And it was a blind experiment to see. I mean, they had like a red packet and a blue packet, and at the end they were going to compare all of the results. But I heard about this and thought, well, I'm midway on my PhD, and I'm doing experiments exposing plants to radiation here on Earth. And then I started to look at the types of radiation that you get on the International Space Station, as by some happy coincidence, the dose, not the type, not the characteristic of the radiation, but the dose, which is what I was focusing on, of ionizing radiation, was almost directly comparable to the plants that I was growing in my lab. So I just thought, wouldn't it be a cool idea if I could get hold of some of these experiments? Yes, there's me in the lab, with my dosimeter on as well, to see if there's any kind of difference between plants on Earth and in space. So I exposed these to radiation as well to see if there was any kind of memory these plants had for being exposed to radiation in space. But nothing much happened. But again, that's not a huge surprise, because of the reasons I was explaining earlier about how plants can deal with radiation anyway. So then I kind of just started reading into space more and more, and those plants became a chapter in my PhD thesis, and all of a sudden it became plants on Earth and in space. And then I made the leap to the space agency.
A giant leap. Wow. I'm going to say giant leap.
You could say I launched my career.
That wasn't quite. You beat me to it.
A whole load of space puns in there, and so there's ISS work. And then there's a thing called Lunar Gateway, which is terribly exciting. And I'm going to let you explain what the Lunar Gateway is. And I think we've got a little video. Should we do the video first or the video second, Scotty?
Oh, I think we'll have a bit of video first, shall we? And then come back.
Wait there, Nicole.
Yeah, don't go away.
50 years ago, we pioneered a path to the moon. The trail we blazed cut through the fictions of science and showed us all what was possible.
Very pretty out here.
Today, our calling to explore is even greater. To go farther, we must be able to sustain missions of greater distance and duration. We must use the resources we find at our destinations. We must overcome radiation, isolation, gravity, and extreme environments like never before. These are the challenges we face to push the bounds of humanity. We're going to the moon to stay by 2024, and this is how.
This all starts with the ability to get larger, heavier payloads off-planet and beyond Earth's gravity.
For this, we designed an entirely new rocket.
The Space Launch System. SLS will be the most powerful rocket ever developed.
And with components in production
and more in testing,
this system is capable of being the catalyst for deep space missions.
We need a capsule
that can support humans from launch
through deep space and return safely back to Earth.
For this, we've built Orion.
This is NASA's next generation human space capsule.
Using data from lunar orbiters that continue to reveal the moon's hazards and resources,
we're currently developing an entirely new approach to landing and operating on the moon.
Using our commercial partners to deliver science instruments and robotics to the surface, we are paving the way for human missions in 2024.
Our charge is to go quickly and to stay, to press our collective efforts forward with a fervor that will see us return to the moon in a manner that is wholly different than 50 years ago.
We want lunar landers that are reusable.
That can land anywhere on the lunar surface. The simplest way to do so is to give them a platform in orbit around the moon from which to transition.
An orbiting platform to host deep space experiments and be a waypoint for human capsules. We call this lunar outpost Gateway.
The beauty of the Gateway is that it can be moved between orbits.
It will balance between the Earth and Moon's gravity,
in a position that is ideal for launching even deeper space missions.
In 2009, we learned that the moon contains millions of tons of water ice.
This ice can be extracted and purified for water. It can be separated in oxygen for breathing or hydrogen for rocket fuel.
The moon is quite uniquely suited
to prepare us and propel us to Mars and beyond.
This is what we are building.
This is what we're training for.
This we can replicate throughout the solar system.
This is the next chapter of human space exploration.
Humans are the most fragile element of this entire endeavor, and yet we go for humanity. We go to the moon and onto Mars to seek knowledge and understanding and to share it with all. We go knowing our efforts will create opportunities that cannot be foreseen. We go because we are destined to explore and see it with our own eyes. We turn towards the moon now, not as a conclusion, but as preparation, as a checkpoint toward all that lies beyond. Our greatest adventures remain ahead of us. We are going.
We're going.
We are going.
We are going. We're going.
Wow.
So that's pretty awesome.
We're going.
The moon,
apparently.
I mean, yeah, NASA's going.
But the moon could
going
stay.
without ESA. I mean, I think I need to have a word with our media team because that is some slick production, and the narration wasn't it beautiful?
Well, I think the narration is William
Shatner. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
T.J. Hooker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
T.J. Hooker, you idiot.
Oh, sorry, I'm you.
So,
but this is the bit gateway,
That's
isn't
the
it?
gateway. That is the gateway. It's gone through several iterations and different kind of names. At one point, it was the Deep Space Gateway, which sounded really, really cool. Then it was the Lunar Orbital Platform Gateway, LOP-G. That was the name that was flying around at one point. Yeah, it wasn't that great, was it? But now it is gateway. So yeah, it's in the planning at the moment. So as I mentioned before, I was working on International Space Station projects, and the International Space Station is quite rightly it's in space. It's not that far away. And the crucial point here is it's inside the Earth's magnetic layer, the magnetosphere. So it is protected largely by Earth's atmosphere. So with the gateway, one of the major challenges is as you go outside of that, so as you go to lunar orbit, it goes inside with the type of orbit. It's called a near rectilinear halo orbit, and that will be going inside the Earth's magnetic field and then kind of outside again. But it's those outside moments that are going to be really challenging for building a spacecraft that can withstand all sorts of events in space with space weather and the nature of that. It's wild out there.
So the gateway is not just orbiting the moon; it's running backwards.
It is orbiting the moon, but it's orbiting in a shape, if you like, that means that it kind of comes in and out of Earth's magnetic field. So it has a little.
It's like teardrop, isn't it? It's like a teardrop shape as it comes around the moon, back-ish. Yeah.
All right, Joe. Yes.
So
yes.
Because I right now feel like I'm basically living in a science fiction movie. They're talking about off-planet, the moon to stay, and 2024, so not very far away. So it feels like the next decade has the potential to be really a very different kind of, the sky is not really going to be the limit for us anymore. A very, very sort of different environment, and that people should be thinking rather differently about how we're going to live on this planet and off it. Is that right? Is that what's happening now?
So from an ESA perspective, I work in the Department of Human Spaceflight and Robotic Exploration, and it's the exploration of space that really concerns us, not so much the colonization. And actually the term colonizing, there's all this, move to colonize Mars, and to me it's a little bit cringy, and I think there's a lot to say about humanity wanting to colonize places, as historically it has done. So from a science perspective, I think going to the moon is awesome, and there's a great science case for doing so. Going to Mars is also good science you can do. Whether or not I would like to see astronauts on Mars, with the current understanding of how challenging that is, how dangerous that is, at the moment we're thinking it's a one-way trip. Because of how dangerous it is, I'm not sure. But with the advances in robotics, I think there is a lot we can do with robotic exploration, as you've seen with the current goings on Mars. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the first powered flight, the little
we don't talk about that because that's one of those things.
It's a helicopter, and Scott doesn't like helicopters.
We don't talk about that. We had it on briefly. But it would have to be a helicopter.
You do seem to have this allergy to rotary, so I will refrain.
He's terrible. I flew a helicopter the week before last. It was awesome. So, anyway, so, I mean, what's the worst that could happen in space? Let's face it.
I mean, you open the door and you don't have a suit on. That's kind of the worst thing that could happen.
That's probably going to end badly. Even in my limited experience, that's not going to be good for you.
No. Not really.
Talking about extreme environments, and you have been in a few extreme environments doing your research, Nicol. Chernobyl, a prime example. Do you ever worry about it? Are you ever worried about, I've just exposed myself to a bazillion rads or whatever it is? Are you ever concerned about your own safety doing these things? And I know there's safeguards, but they can only go so far.
So with the types of radionuclides I was handling, I always made sure that I was properly dressed. So I always had a lab coat on, gloves, 2 layers of gloves actually, taped at the wrist, just in case any liquid radionuclide was going to be creeping up through your gloves. It's not something you want to get onto your skin. Ultimately, we have safe limits for anyone working with radiation. So I knew I made calculations with our radiation safety supervisor to make sure that the radionuclides I was handling would be a safe limit. And actually, we worked out that if I had eaten all of the soil that I had spiked with cesium, it wouldn't make me feel very well, but it wouldn't be catastrophic. And I think there was some correlation that she is very, very smart radiation protection supervisor, Alison Halliday at UWE Bristol, shout out. We worked out that the amount of radiation that you would have is kind of equivalent to smoking cigarettes, an average cigarette smoker a year. There's a lot of radiation in cigarettes, by the way.
Really?
So,
wow.
Yeah, so this kind of this fact used to surprise people.
Wow.
But, so no, like I said earlier, radiation, yes, it's dangerous if you don't know what you're doing, and if you have the right tools to monitor and understand the doses that you're exposed to, then you can make calculations, and then you can know, okay, it's enough for me now, or
So extreme. So I was going to go into talking about extreme stuff. So we all like a drink, and not drinking or not having any water is pretty extreme in my views. Now, we were talking, as I give the intro, about extremophile life forms, and I watched a couple of your talks today. I was stalking you on the internet, and It's okay. It was only work stuff. I'm really curious about these life forms. They're just amazing. Particularly one called Strain 121. Now that is a catchy name, but I just found it utterly amazing. This thing it can exist. It can replicate. It can reproduce at 121 degrees C. I mean, it's just amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about extremophiles?
Yeah, so extremophiles. Look, there's a tardigrade. It's probably one of the most famous on Tardigrade, also known as a water bear.
It looks like someone from Doctor Who.
So some people recoil in horror and think they're the ugliest thing. I think they're pretty cute, and when you look at them under a microscope, they move in a really like cute way. So I do love a tardigrade. So yeah, extremophiles, to kind of backtrack, sorry, when you distracted me with your lovely illustration there of a tardigrade. So an extremophile is the name given to an organism that can exist in an extreme environment. So it doesn't always mean like you gave the example of strain 121. So that is a bacteria that can survive in 121 degrees Celsius. So that is an example of an extremophile, but then you have all sorts of extremophiles like, you showed the tardigrade, so we'll go tardigrade. The tardigrade is quite famous for being able to withstand extreme temperatures. So not just really high temperatures, but also low temperatures, freezing. What can it do? It can also withstand complete desiccation. So you can dry it down to, near complete, to 98.2%, I think. You can dry it out, so it's only got a trace amount of water left, and then you can revive it again. And you can also expose them to very high radiation environments. And there are lots of other examples of organisms that can also do this, but we'll go with tardigrades as you showed that one, and it's the one people seem to like the most.
So these are all Earth-based organisms currently.
So
not imported, because I'm getting worried now.
So the reason we want to study extremophiles is because, as I alluded to earlier, space is an extreme environment. There are extreme temperature fluctuations. You have the space vacuum, you have space pressure, all the different types of radiation. So it's not just a case of dose, but you've got very energetic particles. You've got all sorts of stuff going on in space, which is an extreme environment. So if we are concerned with looking out into the cosmos and looking at the potential that there could be life elsewhere off planet, then a good place to start would be having a look at life as we know it, and the life as we know it that can withstand those extreme environments. So as scientists, what we like to do is pluck these little creatures out of their environments and do experiments with them, in space. So tardigrades are a famous one. I'm not sure exactly why, apart from just aesthetically, because I think they look cute and people are fascinated with how they look. But the European Space Agency only sent tardigrades on one mission, but that kind of captured everyone's imagination. It was in the headlines because the headline was that tardigrades are an organism that can survive exposure to open space. So we put them outside of a spacecraft and exposed them to complete space conditions, and a portion of them survived, but they didn't survive for very long. And this is always my bugbear, and this is like the most nerdy annoyance ever, because everyone goes, oh, tardigrades, they can survive space, and I'm kind of like, well, hang on a minute. First of all, you can only send tardigrades to open space if they are in this dry or desiccated condition. You can't just pluck a tardigrade out of its natural environment on Earth, which is anywhere there's fresh water and moss. They like to live in moss and lichen as well. You can't pluck one out and go and put it in space. It will die. You have to desiccate it so that there's low water content, so that the radiation won't react with the water molecules and create damage causing so it's called radiolysis. And so it's when you literally beam radiation to water, and then it will split water down into very harmful things such as hydrogen peroxide.
Right.
So these are called reactive oxygen species. So when people say take your vitamins because they have antioxidants in them, this is what they're talking about. An antioxidant is something that will neutralize a harmful reactive oxygen species. So sorry, slight biochemistry lesson. I didn't really want to get into that, but yeah. So yes. So they can survive exposure to space in this desiccated condition, but only if they are behind certain filters. They still cannot get over the UV radiation coming from the sun. If you have unfiltered solar light, the tardigrades cannot be revived. The radiation is simply too strong for them. So yes, they can survive open space, and the ones that were unfiltered can survive for a matter of hours, but not very long. But the whole reason we want to do this is to see how they can survive, what they can survive, and then use that information to see if there are other organisms that could also survive that. And so we kind of know what we're looking for when we send probes deeper out into space to see if there is life, or not so deep out into space.
So talking about unusual looking organisms in space, I mean, there's obviously 3 billionaires flying themselves to space at the moment.
In a very unusual looking organ.
And it's very sort of showy, and it I think what we're hearing here, right? So we get in aeroplanes, we get airborne, and it's all very simple, relatively speaking nowadays. Very simple. We make it seem very simple, but we certainly don't have this kind of life-sustaining problem. And it sounds like there's this huge amount of work that's going on at ESA and at NASA and wherever else to try and understand what
these are also available.
other organizations are available, but to get into deep space.
Yes.
Is there something in that the billionaire kind of space race thing that's going to teach us anything, do you think? This can be your opinion, not the official opinion.
So yeah, well, I will give you my opinion. So do I think billionaires going on a jolly to space is a good thing? Not in itself, no. Do I think that it stimulates a lot of financial interest in the space industry? Yes, absolutely. And what do we want to see? We want to see more access to space. Why? From a selfish perspective, I want to see more science going on. And if you have more spacecraft going into space, to me, that equals more opportunities to do science. And indeed, this wasn't really shouted about, but on both of these missions, I believe on Bezos and also Branson's missions, they had some scientific experiments going on, but that wasn't the front page newspaper, and it's not as glamorous, and that wouldn't really sell the story as the most recent one, the Blue Origin flight with Wally Funk, who is absolutely one of my heroes, and I'm so glad that she got to go on that flight. Yes, and actually, had she not been selected, I don't know if I would have tuned in. Well, no, look, everyone likes watching a rocket launch, so I would have, but I wouldn't have been so hopeful.
Especially a rocket launch that looks so unusual.
Well, look, I mean, everyone likes to have a model of like a space shuttle or something. I think Lego had like a space shuttle as well. Everyone wants to like replicate that, and you want to have it on your mantelpiece. But I don't really. I mean, that's the kind of thing you'd have on your mantelpiece, and if you had guests around, you'd kind of want to hide it because it looks like something else.
It depends on the guests you're inviting round and what kind of party you're having, to be fair. But we'll move on from that.
It's an unusual looking rocket, there's no doubt.
It is. But it worked.
It did work. It did work.
With loads of
the right batteries. Must have the right batteries. Going back to your videos, Nicole. Go back to your videos.
I'm going to red card you, Scott.
Oh, I'm getting red carded now. Yeah. Oh, goodness.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We talked in your videos about importing and exporting life forms between planets. Now we've exported the tardigrade to space. Mark might ask you some questions in a minute about another tardigrade thing that went slightly wrong. But do you think that we've ever imported something unwittingly of that ilk onto our own planet?
So that is one of the fundamental questions that astrobiologists ask. I mean, okay, so astrobiology is concerned with three main topics. That's the origins of life, that's the limits of life, so that's all the experiments that we're doing to see what could potentially exist out there, and that's the possibility that there's life elsewhere. Now, you've touched upon a very well-documented theory called the Panspermia Theory, and that is this belief that life could have been imported from somewhere else to space. So when we're talking about the origins of life, how did life begin? Was there a spontaneous coming together of organic material, and that sparked life here, or did it come from somewhere else? And so, why we do these experiments to see what can withstand, what can withstand space conditions, is because if something indeed was imported on an asteroid, for example, we want to see, well, could it survive ride? And you kind of there's a cartoon where you can see a bacteria just clinging to the edge of an asteroid going wee as it comes down to Earth, but it might not be as simplistic as that. As you know, we haven't actually found any tardigrades or any swimming organisms that could probably do that, but maybe they buried into the surface of something, maybe they shattered open, we don't know, but there's lots of work to be done. So yes, there is the possibility that the life started elsewhere and was imported here. We just don't know.
Utterly terrifying.
Science is eloquently saying that we don't know, but we're working on
it. And my understanding is that, so everybody's like very careful about, we don't want to sort of export our sort of biological kind of refuse into space or onto other worlds. But my understanding is that some little tardigrades have made it to the moon by accident. Is that right?
Yes. Now, this was a couple of years ago, and this really caught the headlines. I think the Sun newspaper had my favorite ones, which was micro pigs on the moon. And then all of a sudden, social media exploded. I have hand on my heart, I have never had a busier day on the phones. I mean, usually I do most of my work online via emails. My phone was ringing non-stop. Our media department was begging for somebody that worked in astrobiology to answer questions coming in from the media about the implications that this could have. And so I had to kind of put things on pause for a minute, and I needed to find out what had actually happened. So there was an Israeli mission called Bereshit, which was a lunar lander which actually crash landed on the moon, and this was I think it was funded by the Google X Prize. This is 2-3 years ago. I don't know, everything's a blur post-pandemic or mid-pandemic still. So there was a private company called the Ark Mission Foundation, and their kind of their vision is to put as much information about humanity into space. I think it's kind of as a backup plan should we go under, which is pretty bleak, but okay, that's what they wanted to do. So they got in touch with the Israeli Space Agency or whoever it was. Actually, I don't even know if it was ISA, but they made a deal that they would put reams of information on these discs, these like micro etched discs, with everything from language to geography and religion, just all of the kind of basic human stuff that they wanted to put on the moon as a kind of backup, and what they didn't tell them, the story goes, is that there was a clandestine payload, and that was in the form of a load of biological samples. So this was stuff like human hair, nails, I believe, and then also tardigrades. And it was the tardigrades that really caused a stir, because when you're talking about putting life somewhere else and you didn't tell anyone about it, that's kind of a big deal.
Yeah,
so,
sounds a little irresponsible.
Yeah, so I got in touch with the guy that did it. And I respect, because really, really nice guy, and he explained calmly that he wanted to put biological samples, and he kind of knew what he was doing in terms of what was legal and what was not, in terms of planetary protection. I can touch on that a little bit more in a moment. But essentially, these tardigrades were sent in that dry, desiccated condition, and they were encased in several layers of metal and resin. So when they crash landed, or when the craft crash landed on the moon, if they were ejected, and even if the resin cracked and the tardigrades were spilled, I think the newspapers like to use that term, spilled out onto the surface of the moon, they're not active and they couldn't do anything. And as I mentioned earlier, with the experiments that we sent, well, if you're going to expose tardigrades to open space, they ain't going to survive the radiation for very long. So there was that. And if by some stroke of luck that there was a puddle on the moon, I don't know, but an icy a comet hit the surface of the moon and then it activated the tardigrades like that and they woke up, yeah, great, but there's nothing for them to eat. So then you wouldn't, so essentially they sent some biological samples that I have full confidence that are not active and have no
Is what you're saying that the
don't
sun,
panic is what I'm saying.
The sun has produced a not a very accurate headline?
They produced a headline that probably sold very well. It was front page.
Very well put.
Yes.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yes. But I mean, it was for me, I quite enjoyed it because it sparked a lot of debate and opened people's eyes to the fact that we're doing science in space and there are these organisms that could potentially survive space. So that was quite good for me.
Wow.
Nicole, what an amazing hour that's been. And it has been an hour. It's passed by so quickly. Yeah, we have loved having you on. I have learned so much in the last hour or so. Utterly amazing. A part of space science that, I'll be truthfully honest, until a couple of days ago, I really had no interest in, but I'm now enthused by it.
I appreciate the honesty.
And the complexity of it, it's just, I love the tardigrades as well. I'm sorry, I really do. I think it looks cute. How big are they in really? I mean, they're obviously, they're not this big, but I mean,
they're no bigger than a full stop in a book you're reading. No, that you need a microscope to be able to see them.
Wow. Okay. And are they, sorry, this is me just asking random questions now. Are they a pack type animal organism, or do they be singles, or do they like to run as a pack?
They're pretty independent. I've never really seen them dancing with each other, so I'm going to say they kind of do their own thing.
You could become like a sort of tardigrade herder or something like that, Scott. Maybe.
There might be money if we can export them to the moon. Before you go, we're going to do
the questions. But can I just ask?
Going to do the questions. Go on.
If I want to get a youngish person enthused, is The Martian worth a read? I enjoyed it a lot, but is it enough, or does it kind of like, if I watch an airplane movie, I basically ruin it for everyone?
Well, this is the thing. This is the thing. I've not read and I've not seen it for that very reason. And yeah, everyone has the same reaction. Wait, you're a plant biologist. You work in space. You've not seen The Martian. Well, yeah. So
I read it rather than see it, because the book is definitely better and has more science in it.
I believe you. Generally, that's how things go.
Yeah.
But,
okay. Well, that's so. Okay, so but
if you want, but also have a plug. If you want to get a young person enthused about space, the European Space Agency every year in October has an open day. For the past year, it's been online for obvious reasons. But we open up our doors, and you can get tickets online. If we have a virtual event, you can get tickets to the virtual event, and you can meet some space scientists and engineers, and you can have a little tour of our facilities, and it's great fun.
Asking for a friend now. How young do you have to be to go on an open day like that? Are we talking sort of?
There's no age limit.
Fine. My friend will be very happy about that, I think. Yeah. We will have
this is so fun.
We will have an amazing night out in Holland, no matter what happens. We'll come and visit. These last
Tardigrades,
questions
yeah.
we've got to get to them. Oh, I'd love to see some if you have some when we're there.
I've got the microscope there.
Sorry, we've got to stop. We've got to ask the questions now. We've got to ask the questions.
Go.
Right, okay. I'll kick off. Looking back on your career thus far, and I know that you've had an eclectic journey through school and everything. What are you most proud of?
That's a tough one. Anything beyond a GCSE was always a plus for me. that was kind of like the first goal. What am I most proud of? In 2018, I received a commendation from the Royal Aeronautical Society. So that was something that was really special. And more recently, last week I received another commendation from the that's me, at the Royal Aeronautical Society HQ in London. That was a lovely event. I also received the Gateway Program Manager Commendation Award, myself and another member of my team, as being, the first people to be putting plans into place for doing scientific utilization experiments on the Gateway. So that was, I'm proud of that.
Amazing.
Wow.
So knowing what you know now, because I'm going to ask question 2, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your 10-year-old self?
Everything will be all right in the end, and if it isn't all right, it isn't the end. So just keep going.
That's lovely. Scotty, do you want to do the last one?
I'll do the last one. It would normally be Lindsay, but I'll do the last one. I think I might know part of your answer to this one, but I won't jump ahead. What does the next 5 years hold for Dr. Caplin?
So it's really exciting. So at the moment, I'm involved in this really early stage planning of the types of science experiments that we're going to be doing on Gateway. Of course, that spacecraft in itself, it doesn't exist yet. There are various components that are being built. You've seen the Orion module, the European Service module also being built, which will go up with Orion. But the first utilization for science that I'm involved in will hopefully be on the logistics module, and that is slated for 2025 if all goes well. So we'll be looking forward to be doing some biological experiments, physics experiments, all sorts of exciting stuff on them. So that's what I'm looking forward to in the next 5 years.
Wow. Nicol, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So much fun as well, talking about science. Love it. No, it is. It's been really fun. Thanks for coming on, and we'll speak to you in a bit.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Nicol.
Wow. Super scientist. I am absolutely gobsmacked, mate.
And completely sort of took a direction that I really didn't expect. I was expecting Nicol to say, I was brilliant at everything at school. and therefore became a mega scientist.
It's really, really interesting. And I'm just going to look back at some of these, and it says from Elaine, what a gateway story from Nicol. And it's an amazing gateway story. Totally amazing. From struggling at school by not being able to, balance the two parts of her life, and then ending up working as a doctor for ESA. Amazing. Absolutely brilliant. Amazing. So hopefully I can't wait to have, it would have been great to have Nicol and Bonnie on at the same time.
Oh my goodness.
That'd have been pretty cool. That will, maybe for Christmas, maybe at the Christmas party we'll have them both on. That'll be
party.
Yeah, we are getting close to it as well. Yeah, so maybe we'll go and visit Nicol at the open day if that's possible before the Christmas party. That'll be really cool. I can get to see some tardigrades. It'll be amazing. Looking ahead to next week, hopefully, Lindsay will be back.
You never quite know, because she is doing all of the flying for everyone combined. But
but hopefully she'll be back, and we've got a special guest coming up, but I'm not going to tell you who it is. You know who it is.
Yeah, it's good.
You know who it is. but we've got to keep it a secret for now because we might have to do some pre-recording for this one. But it will be amazing. I'll see you all next week. Cheers, buddy.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.